Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far in, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps promote my channel and I appreciate it. I also love it if people leave comments, so leave me a comment. I usually do dangle earrings when I make earrings, so I thought today for a change I was going to do some simple post earrings. So I came up with 5 little designs and we'll see how they work, but it should be fun. Before we get started though, I would like to thank my patrons over on Patreon. They're a super nice group of people. I really appreciate all of their support. Thanks for that. You guys rock. I also wanted to thank my YouTube subscribers who also rock. We just passed 8,000, which is amazing, and I really appreciate all of you taking the time to check out my videos and subscribe. But thank you for all of your support. I really appreciate not only the financial support, like when someone buys me a coffee, but also just the really nice comments that people leave. I appreciate that. Okay, well, let's get started on these earring projects. Here's my design idea book that I use to draw up my designs when I'm getting ready to do a project. I didn't used to do this, but ever since I started to, my designs have come out to be better. So I think it's worth checking out. They're available on my merch store. They do have this nice feature, which is kind of like graph paper, but it's just a little grid in the background. And I like that because it helps me to keep things sort of proportional, which is not my strongest suit. So, okay, here's the ideas that I had for these ones. And there's a zillion different ideas for little post earrings. So these are just a few, but I think they'll be fun. I've made this one before where I take 3 pieces of wire and then I spiral them around and solder them to themselves like that, so it creates kind of this triple wheel looking thing, and that's kind of a fun design. I think I'll probably for this one use 16 gauge. You could use 14 as well. Second one, I'm going to just make some simple cubes and put them on posts, and I'm going to saw those out of a piece of thick ingot that I cast a while back. So we'll cut some little squares out of there and just mount them on some ear wires, or not ear wires, posts. The third one, I'm going to punch out some discs with my disc cutter, and then we'll texture them, and then we'll dome them a little bit and put posts on the back. So I think the first 3 here are probably beginner projects. This one, we start to get into a little more soldering stuff, and so maybe advanced beginner, early intermediate. We're going to do 2 layers of flower petals here with a little center in them, and then a post on the back. And then finally, I pre-made some bezels for these little pink stones that I have that are faceted stones, and we're going to do just a little kind of granny knot attached to each of those. These are kind of based off some that my wife had when she was a child that she really liked, so we'll be doing something like that. These were given to me by one of my patrons, Bobby, and she didn't know what they were, and I don't know what they are. They kind of strike me as synthetic, maybe. They most closely, to me, resemble like pink tourmaline. So if any of you have any ideas what those might be, I think they're very pretty. Under magnification, they don't have a lot of stuff in them, so if you know what they might be, give me some ideas, because I'm at a loss. But they're pretty, so we're going to use them today. So I pre-made a couple of bezels for those. And they're about 4 millimeters. Alright, so let's start with these ones. I have some 14 gauge round. Oh, I was going to use 16, wasn't I? Let's see, where's the 16? Okay, so I'm going to. These are certainly probably going to be not much longer than that. So we'll just cut one about that long, and we'll use that as a gauge to cut the other 5, because I'm making 2 earrings, so I'm going to have to do. And I'm hoping that they're a little bit longer than I need, so, but we can adjust the size based on how big the thing turns out when we bend it. So, all right. I always cut an extra piece if I'm cutting multiple things of the same size. That way, if I screw one up, I still have a template to use to correct my mistake. like if you melted one of your wires or something. So So there's 6, and this will be my 7th as a template I'll set up here as a backup in case I need to cut them again. Okay, let's file these flat. Alright, so sometimes I use one of these electronic protractors to help me get angles right, and so zero it out there. We need, I believe we need 60-degree angles, is that right? I forget my geometry. So yeah, so what we'll need then is like this one, and this one. That'll get us pretty close. You line them up like this. Just like that. That'll give me a nice triple center point there. So let's solder those together that way, but I'm going to straighten these out a little bit first. Mostly I drew this out so I could kind of get a look at when I'm lining these up. So I'm a little, and also something once I solder them on where I can just lay it on top and see how close I am. So if you've never been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder and a liquid flux called My-T-Flux, and my torch is a Silversmith torch, which is an acetylene air torch. And I've been using it for years, and I really like it. So, Smith, contact me. Okay. Oh, you know what? Let's cut some solder first. I do a lot of what's called pick soldering as well, which is where you pick up a little bit of solder, melt it onto the tip of your pick, and then place it where you want it to go. And that is one of those things that has moved me to a new level. So if you're interested in learning about that, I made a video about it a while back. You should check it out. I'll put a link up there. Let's see. Okay, got solder, need flux. Just pick up a little bit of solder there. I'm going to get this solder together, and then I'm going to adjust the angles a little bit. You could just lay a piece of solder across this if you wanted to. But okay. Those two are pretty good. That's not terrible. I think that's probably close enough. So let's do a second one of those. I can kind of probably hover this one over this one. See how close I am. That's not bad. I think that's close enough. I grab them like close to the base there where they come together in the center. Bend this over this way. Do the same thing here. And do the same thing here. And then Probably going to do a little manual shaping to get these to kind of like merge into here. Kind of like that, and what I'll do is I'll cut them off so that they kind of merge right in there. Let's see if I can repeat that process here. So I got those kind of filed to where they're kind of merging into each other, which I kind of like. So let's solder those closed. I think what I'll do is I'll put the posts on all of these at the end. That way you can get to see the process. I'll show you on a couple and you don't have to watch me do all of them. So it's pretty much the same. Okay, let's set those in the pickle for a little while. So for this one, what I did was I determined how thick the sheet was. I didn't really measure it, but I think it's a little more than 3 millimeters if I remember right. And then I scribed a line along this flat edge, and so I think that'll be our first step, is cutting it along that line, and then I'll just cut it off this way, and then we'll cut 2 pieces that are cubic off of that. So. Okay, so here's my little area where I do sawing when I have to saw. So let's see if we can't get this started. I want it on this side of the line, so you can see that okay. I put a number 1 on here. I think I'm going to take the file and file that flat, and make sure I have one side of this nice and flat too. So I'll be right back. I don't know if I had that in view. So this side that I just sawed is not perfectly flat, so I'm going to file that flat, and then I'm going to make sure one of these edges is flat, and then we'll be able to cut squares out of here. So, okay, so we got it relatively flat on all sides, and I went ahead and used on the end here, I used my miter vise jig. If you've never seen these before, they're pretty handy. If you want to get a nice 90-degree angle or a 45-degree angle, you can put them in here and just file right up against it. That's how I got the end of this, nice. But one of the things I need to do here, I want little squares. I'm going to have to cut them off about the same length as they are wide. And so we'll cut one of those off with the saw next. Alright, so I got some relatively cubic pieces of silver there, which we'll set aside for now. And the third one, I'm going to do some little discs. So let's see about how big that is on my disc cutter. I can actually make them a little bit bigger than that because I'm going to dome them slightly. That size a little bit. I think we'll do that size. So right here. Alright. So I'm probably going to use 22 gauge for these. So we'll knock out a couple of these using the disc cutter. All you do is you stick this in here, and then you hit it with a hammer really hard and it knocks it out of there. So I'm going to go do that off camera because it shakes my table too much. Well, here's those two discs. Like I said, they're a little bit bigger than I drew them, so that when I dome them, they'll be closer to that size. I'm not going to dome them very much, just a little bit. My friend Paula in Hawaii sent me these. She's got one of those laser cutter devices, and she cut out a bunch of these patterns for me to roll through the rolling mill with stuff. So I think I'm going to use some of this right here. And what I'll do is I'll tape it on here, probably with some masking tape, and then we'll just roll them through the rolling mill and impress that pattern. So let me get those taped up. Okay, I'm just kind of encasing them in tape like that so that they'll kind of stay in place when I'm rolling them. So let's go do that. Little things like this, usually stick them part way in and then tighten them down a little bit. And then roll it backwards a little bit. Then roll it forwards. Let's see if that worked or not. We got a little pattern on there now. Okay, let's see if we can duplicate that. Got two little kind of rando patterns going on there. I don't want to dome these a huge amount, just a little tiny bit. Get the rest of that tape off of there. Just a little bit of a dome. Just like on the other ones, I'll put posts on those at the end. So we'll set those to the side for now. Then we'll do our fourth ones, which also involves a disc cutter. Since I'm going to cut two circles about that size, or four of them actually, since we're doing two earrings. So maybe about like that. I think that's probably a good one. I'm going to cut four of those out of the same kind of stuff, 20 22 gauge. Hopefully I got enough here to get 4 of them. So I have these 4 discs I just punched out. I colored one purple, and then I used a circular pattern. I like using this little stencil for little circles sometimes when I'm scratching them into things. And I spaced out, sort of, okay, around the center of the circle 3 of those, so that it's going to create kind of 3 petals. And I'm going to do that on this one, and then use that as a template to scratch it out on these ones too. And that'll be our next step. So I could probably cut these out mostly with the shears and then file them. So do a little file cleanup here. That's probably good enough. I'm going to just use that to trace the same pattern out on these and then cut them out. So I'll be right back. Actually, I'll do one here. So we'll do basically the same thing there. Okay, I now have 4 little flower-like shapes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cup one of them, or 2 of them actually, because we're going to solder them on one on top of the other one. And so I want one to be curved upwards like that. So we'll just get it soldered right in the middle, in theory. Basically, I'm just going to solder that on like that. And then I think we need to put a little ball in the center too. What do you think? So let's dome this one too. Let's make a couple of little balls here. Let's take each of these cupped ones, and let's just, I'm going to put a little bit of solder in the middle of each of those, and I'll go ahead and heat them up till it flows. This is called sweat soldering. You pre-melt some solder into a place that you want it to be. Just throw a piece right in the middle there. Flux them. And we should be able to just heat this until it flows. You can generally see it set down when it actually flows, so I think we're good on both of those. offset them evenly, or at least pretty close to evenly. Alright, so I'm going to let those pickle for a while too, and we'll start working on the last ones with the stones. So these are for faceted stones, so I have an open back but a little lip on the inside, which is called a step, that I've created using some wire. If you're interested in seeing how I did those kind of bezels, I'll put a link right there for making a bezel for a faceted stone. Alright, so I'm going to make knots, little granny knots, like this sort of, and attach a bezel to them, and then we'll put a post on the back. So let's see if I can do this. This is 16 gauge wire. I'm going to try something else on this one. I'm going to clamp one in a vice grips and one in my draw tongs and see if I can pull it tighter. Oh, I like that size better. Those are pretty close. Yeah, I like those a lot better since they're not quite so big. Okay, let's decide where to cut those off. Okay, before we do anything else, I'm going to solder that so it can't move anymore. I have some solder in here from before. I think I might flatten these out just a skosh. I think what I'm going to do, should I do it like that? Should I do it like that? I think like that. I'm going to sweat a little bit on the side of the bezel here. And butt this up against there. There we go. I'll do the same on this one probably. So I don't want a huge amount of solder, but I do want enough to keep it on there securely. So that is earring number 5, so it's time to put some posts on the back. Most people online always suggest 6 to 6.5 millimeter deep posts. That always seems a little short to me, so I usually make them a little bit longer. But generally 20 gauge is standard width. So let's cut a piece of this 20 gauge. As I want them to go in opposite directions, I think. So let's put this side down, That's that down. I cut 10 or 11 of these pieces of 20 gauge wire and filed the ends flat, roughly 2.5 centimeters, inch or so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flux those. I'm going to pick up a little ball of solder, and then I'm just going to heat these up to the point where I can just plop it on the back of each of those. So let's get those going. Flux these two. Alright, so I got a little bit of solder right here. I just heat the wire up a little bit so I can pick that up on the bottom so there's a little ball. I should be able to heat this thing up to the point where it's about the right temperature. Just plop that on there. Make sure you get a good flow on there. And you got that one done. So let's throw him in the pickle. The only other thing I'll need to do on those is I will twist them to work harden them again, because we're making them soft by doing this right now, the ear wires, and I'll cut them off at the correct length. And then I usually put a little groove near the end to catch an ear nut. Okay, and we'll just go to the next ones. And that's basically what I'm going to do. So I'm not going to make you watch me put all of these ear nuts on. For these ones, and the knot ones, I'll probably put them kind of right here between where the two join. Once I got those done, I'll set these stones and polish everything, and then I'll show you the final results. So after doing a little bit of cleaning up and polishing, I completed a lot of these already, but I wanted to show you basically what I do to finish them off. And let's talk about the work hardening part first. So by soldering these on, we made these wires really squishy, and in order to have a good earring post, I like to have them a little bit stiffer than that. And so if we want to make these a little harder, I'm just going to bend the end over like this. This is one of the reasons I made them longer than they need to be. And just twist this thing. You can feel it getting harder and harder as you twist it. You don't want to overdo it, otherwise it'll snap off. But it doesn't really affect the look of the wire, but it makes it much stiffer. Okay, like I said earlier, I think a lot of people do 6.5 millimeters, but that to me, that would only take it to about right there. I usually do, a little further out than that, maybe up to 8. Okay. So a lot of times I'll use a cup burr on the end of these to smooth them out, or just file them. The last thing I usually do is to get about a millimeter away from the tip of the post. I grab it with my wire cutters, not very tightly, just a little bit, so that the blades will kind of cut into the wire slightly while I'm doing this, and leave kind of a notch there for the ear nut to catch on. I didn't quite get the size exactly the same on both of these, but close enough probably. And number 2 were little squares. I never make much stuff like this, but I rather like those. They're small. Usually you see circles or spheres as posts, so it's kind of fun to see squares instead, like that. These are the textured domed ones. I think they're nice. If I oxidized them, they might show up the pattern a little bit better, because I didn't impress the pattern terribly deeply. So they may not show up very well on the picture. Hopefully we'll be able to get it to look good on the thumbnail somehow. And we got the flowers here. I particularly like these ones. I think they came out nice. They look nice and flashy and reflecty, so I'm pleased with those ones. And then these knot ones, where it's got the little stones plus the knot below them. I kind of like those ones. Very pretty. So again, if you know what those stones are, tell me what you think. Alright, so I'll take better pictures and put them at the end. Alright, well that was the 5 simple earring post designs. I hope you enjoyed those. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. That really helps out a lot. And take a few moments and check out my YouTube page. I have over 250 video tutorials here, and I do 3 per week. And so I'm consistently producing good content. I think it's worth your while to subscribe. So check those out, subscribe, watch a few other videos, and enjoy my channel. The other thing is, if you have a moment and would like to support the channel, check out the video description down below. There's multiple links to different important places. There's a link to the Buy Me a Coffee site where you can kind of tip me, which allows me to buy more materials and supplies. There's a link to my website if you want to see some jewelry for sale. There's a link to my merch store if you want to get some nice branded merchandise, like the design idea notebooks that I show you at the beginning of each video. And finally, there's a link to my Patreon page if you're interested in checking that out. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you taking the time. Take care and happy silversmithing.